Good evening and welcome to the special meeting for Superintendent candidate interviews on Thursday, May 6th. This meeting is now called to order. Mr. Walker, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. And just as a reminder, please don't forget to mention your location as you call yourself in. Dr. Blau.
Here in Farmington.
Ms. Heinrich.
Here, Farmington Hills.
Mr. Rich.
Here in Farmington Hills.
Ms. Fox.
Here in Farmington Hills.
Ms. Smith.
Here in Farmington Hills.
I myself am here in Farmington Hills, and Ms. Weems.
I am here in Farmington Hills.
All present and accounted for.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We will now, I will now lead us in the pledge. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would someone like to move to approve the agenda?
Ms. Weems?
Yes, Mr. Rich. I can't see you, so just shout out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I move that we approve the agenda for today's special meeting as presented.
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. A motion has been made to approve the agenda by Mr. Rich, supported by Mrs. Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Walker, can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Blau.
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich.
Yes.
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
I myself am yes. Ms. Weems.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That passes. We will now move into superintendent candidate interviews. So again, this is our second day. Just as a reminder, our search firm has reviewed dozens of applicants and selected those who fit our superintendent profile. We had 3 applicants interview yesterday. We have 2 more today. After today's interviews, we're scheduled to review for finalists who will move on to next week's round. We expect to make a decision on our finalists today and on our new superintendent next week. The selection of a superintendent is one of the most important decisions this board will make, and I trust that this board is going to deliberate and we're going to do a great job. I'm really excited about this. Mrs. Buckley, if you could have Dr. Bigelow join us. We have our first candidate for today, and I will wait until I see him.
Unfortunately, he disappeared from the attendees, so I'm hoping that he will arrive back in a moment.
No problem. Technology, it happens.
And unfortunately, I don't have contact information for any of the candidates, so I don't have his cell phone number.
I can send you that.
Okay.
Or Zach, could you just text him and see if he needs assistance?
I can do that. One moment. I'll do that right now. Dr. Bigelow is having issues with his computer. He's currently working to access it on his phone.
Thank you, Ms. Rich.
And luckily, I remember that we have all the contact information on the top of the applications in board book. Ms. Weems, if I may make a
Yes.
comment while we were waiting.
Mhm.
I just wanted to let people know that there is the comment form that was put out through email. It's also available through the website, I do believe. And I'm just encouraging people. I know that there are a lot of emotions and many different thoughts on this process and of the candidates we are interviewing. I've been able to go through some of the feedback we've already received. I just want to request that while people might have some strong feelings one way or another about certain candidates, to please be mature in your comments. And that is just a overall feedback on some of the things we've seen come in already.
Thank you. And I would encourage board members to use this time to start reviewing the feedback since we've got some time here. That may save us some time on the back end.
I read all of the comments that were in up until a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, me too.
I'm working only with one screen, so I don't want to take the chance of going out and not being able to come back in.
Ms. Williams, will we be reading those, or that's just for our perusal?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Will we have an opportunity to, excuse me, to take a look at any feedback from tonight's interviews before we deliberate? Okay.
Yes, to the extent that folks, populate that spreadsheet or Google form real time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rich, is there anything I can do to help Mr. Bigelow, Dr. Bigelow?
Let me send you his contact number.
Well, Angie sent me his number, but is he telling you, is there anything
He just told me having major issues trying another computer.
Okay.
Ms. Weems, we will not be calling candidates by name. Will we be doing numbers or letters?
I'm sorry, we will be calling candidates by name because they've already agreed to be named publicly. So when we get to that step, we can definitely use names.
Thank you.
And I will give it about 5 more minutes. And if Dr. Bigelow is unable to join us via the web, I would suggest, and I'm looking for my board members for approval. I wonder whether we could call him and whether that might be better.
I would be open to that.
Zach, should I send him the call-in number, or does he already have that?
I think that would be good. I do not know if he has that already.
Okay. Zach, do you still have board book up?
I do.
Could you send me his email address?
Yes. Looks like he's in.
Hi there, I'm in. Hold on, let me get the camera here. All right, sorry about that. Wow, that could not have happened at a worse time. How is everybody?
We are well, thank you.
So I'm on my phone, but it looks like it's working okay.
Looks pretty
It's
good.
perfect.
Good.
Yep, we can see you and we can hear you well. I know
Okay.
that you were previously in, and I understand that there was a technical glitch and you got popped out. So
Yep.
we'll go ahead and proceed. Fortunately, we can hear you and we can see you, and you can hear and see us as well. So that's great.
Perfect.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Because of the timing, we're going to have to limit to 7 o'clock is our end time. So we've got about
That's okay.
45 minutes. I'm Terry Weems. Welcome. I
Hi,
am
Terry.
president of the Board of Education, and my colleagues are all on. We are very excited to have you. We want to thank you, first of all, for your application to become the next superintendent of Farmington Public Schools. You have exceptional qualifications, which is why you're here. Please accept our deep appreciation for your interest in our district. We're pretty proud of Farmington Hills. Over the next 45 minutes, you'll be asked about 15 questions, which will be rotated amongst members of our board. So you have about now 2 to 3 minutes for each question to allow yourself some time for some closing comments. I'm going to serve as chairperson and timekeeper. If you're ready, we will begin with our opening question.
I'm ready.
Perfect. We have all had, the board has had an opportunity to carefully review your resume, and but our public has not. So please give us a brief introduction about yourself and 1 or 2 of the most important highlights in your career or training that you believe uniquely qualify you for superintendent of Farmington Public Schools.
I'd be more than happy to. I met my wife at the University of Michigan, and I'm actually was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, and she's from the Washington Township area. And when we ended up leaving college, we moved into the Metro Detroit area to be by her parents. I ended up getting hired as a teacher in South Lyon at an elementary school, and my wife got hired as an elementary school in Warren Consolidated. From that point, after 1 year in South Lyon, I actually then also got hired in the same district as my wife, which is Warren Consolidated Schools. And I was a middle school teacher for 3 years. And then at that same middle school, I then became the assistant principal. I was an assistant principal there for 3 years. And from there, I ended up at Carleton Middle School, which is in Sterling Heights. I was principal there for 4 years, but it's the same school district. And then after 4 years at Carleton, I became the principal of Cousino High School, which is in Warren on 13 and Hoover, between 12 and 13 in Hoover. And so that was my time there. And it's amazing how much growth happens during those early years. I was working on my master's degree and then my ed specialist. But it was during that time as a principal at Cousino that I realized that the job was becoming routine. And that was alarming to me. So that's when I decided I needed to push myself a little bit more. I ended up enrolling at Oakland University into the PhD program. And that was a challenge, certainly, but needed for my own personal growth. And after my 6 years in Warren, I ended up applying for a superintendent position in a small rural district between Port Huron and Lapeer. And I am not a small rural kind of guy, so that was an excellent experience while I was there. And within that small district, I got experience of just about everything. I had a business manager and myself, and that was all of central office. And so that was actually crucial to my growth, to truly understanding how central office works. I'm very proud of the work that was done in that small district. It was declining in enrollment. I was able to collapse 2 campuses into one, pass a bond, which hadn't been done there for a very long time. And actually their high school now And by the way, this is not credit to me. This is because of the team I had working with me, but their high schools recognized as one of the top in the state of Michigan. From there, I ended up getting hired in Bay City Public Schools. I'm in year 4 now in Bay City. Bay City is a large district. Geographically, it covers 260 square miles. We go into, Saginaw County a little bit. We cover Bay City and several communities around the Bay City area, and then we go a little bit into the city of Midland as well. We have approximately 7,000 students right now, 2 traditional high schools, an alternative high school, which I'm very proud of. I started. It's a hybrid high school. And then we have 2 middle schools, 8 elementaries, and 2 early childhood buildings. So cover a lot of area, and with that, a lot of different socioeconomic groups and different demographics based on what communities within Bay City Public Schools we're serving. I'm incredibly proud of the work that's happened in Bay City. Not only getting in the hybrid high school, but also passing 2 bonds while I've been here. Our strategic plan was very successful in getting a lot of this work done as far as being goal focused. We finished our 5-year plan in 3 years. We're already on plan number 2. So there's a lot of exciting momentum going on as well. So lots to be proud of. They've all been great experiences. So you're probably thinking, okay, so that's great, but why are you thinking about Farmington? Well, I have a love for the Detroit area. I know a lot of people within Farmington. You've got a great reputation. I'm actually impressed with hard choices that have been made within your community as well over the last several years, from combining a couple high schools to some of the direction with STEAM. It's just nice to see that that's happening. So that's attractive for me.
Farmington, like other school districts, has experienced significant turmoil related to such issues as COVID, downsizing, and equity demands from a changing community with diverse needs and interests. What qualities, specific skills, and experiences can you point to that demonstrate your ability to bring together disparate groups and perspectives?
Zach, you really hit it with the fact that it's not unique to Farmington. That is absolutely happening everywhere right now. I will just tell you, within Bay City Public, with the declining enrollment, that's not something that's going to drastically change anytime soon, and that's like other districts in Michigan as well, with a very few examples or exceptions out there. It's just simply we don't see as many kids coming in, and families are moving to other areas. But one of the things that's important for a superintendent to do from that aspect, and which I have done here, is you're not only a face of the school district, but you've got to become a face of the community too. So I'm very active in a lot of community organizations. And by doing that, by truly being a servant leader and helping in the community, you're able to attract some students who may have traditionally gone off to either neighboring districts or also to private schools, just by being out there and being part of the community. So that's number one. The DEI topic is enormous, and it's something that many communities are struggling with. I think are going to continue to. And I was just having a conversation with the president of our local NAACP here earlier last week. We're doing a lot of work with the NAACP within our community because it's absolutely fractured based on what area within Bay City Public Schools you are. And the most frustrating part are the areas where people don't see that there is a problem when there clearly is. And so not only do we need to work on, the typical professional development that happens with teachers, but place an emphasis of hiring diverse candidates within our community, but also, and this is the toughest part, we're dealing with some generational issues too. We really need to focus on educating the public, the community as a whole. And that's something that we're starting to do through some of our outreach programs, but it is not a quick fix at all. It's a long game that we're playing. It's going to take a lot of work. And I think that's the same throughout Michigan.
Good evening, Dr. Bigelow.
Hi.
Would you discuss, please, an effective process you use for developing a district budget particularly when there's been a variety of needs such as staff wages, student support, potential loss of revenue from declining enrollment, those kinds of things. Who needs to be informed and who needs to be engaged? And once you've done all of that, what was the outcome?
My second day on the job in Bay City, I got a letter from the Department of Treasury that said, congratulations on your new job, and you are a deficit district. What are you going to do about it, basically? So that was a rude awakening. We actually did something that was radical for this area, and it worked out remarkably well. So with that deficit letter, it meant that our fund balance was somewhere between 0 and 3%. And what happened in Bay City happened in a lot of districts where traditionally 1 year's budget simply gets rolled over to the next year. And people may add a few things on here or there, but they're not necessarily taking a deep look. So I did something called zero-based budgeting, which was difficult at first for many people, but had enormous benefits as we got through it. It was an educational process. I will tell you, as a former high school principal, I had a little bit of a sense of how a building budget worked, but as far as a district budget, I didn't. And it's important that everybody in the district understands that, because it is really one fluid group. And so with zero-based budgeting, we actually did training with all of our individual unit or building leaders, mainly principals and people who are running departments. And we also brought the community in and did training with the board as well to understand what it was. But the premise was simple. Pretend you have no money. We're starting at 0. Now tell me exactly what do you need just to run a bare bones school. And so we actually, now this was done over days of meetings and lots of individual meetings too. We looked at what just a basic school is. Okay, let's track your individual funds in the building and what's coming from grant and title fund. Then from there, what are some of the things that you would like to see? And we sat all the people who control budgets in the same room together so that they could see what other buildings were saying as well. Through that process, which we have done every single year since then, not only are our building principals getting really good at understanding how school finance works and how a district budget works, but we're getting much smarter with our money. We actually freed up a lot of dollars that we didn't know were there in the first place because they were simply being rolled over each year for things. And so we've gotten rid of things that we forgot we were paying for that maybe weren't effective and moved that money. Through that process, we were able to settle a 3-year teacher contract where they saw some nice increases where they hadn't in years. And after year 1, our between 0 and 3% became 8%. We're now at a 16% fund balance because of that. And it was through the zero-based budgeting process, which I mean, I owe everything to that for creating opportunities in our district that simply weren't there before. That was remarkable. Donald, there was a part to the end of that I forgot what the actual question was. Would you be able to repeat that for me?
Certainly. It was, who did you engage? Well, you did answer some of that, and you mentioned the community as well. So the overall outcomes, if I'm not going to ask you to go any deeper than that. I think you've really spoken to that. Okay. So I think we're good, and let's move you on.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
The Farmington Public Schools is a competitive educational marketplace. Parents have options. What would be a plan to market the district and to communicate why parents should invest in Farmington Public Schools?
Yeah, the biggest part is getting out and celebrating and communicating what is happening within the individual buildings. Now, I do think that needs to be done through a professional marketing firm. You know, in school, we can do okay with the marketing, but bringing somebody who really understands marketing is important in that process so they can actually do some of the targeted advertisements going to potential parents, sorted by, you know, demographics and those sorts of things. But also, it's about the superintendent being a cheerleader for the district, being out and visible at as many events as humanly possible, making appearance, you know, at community events. I've been in numerous dunk tanks and all those things that are for a good cause. but it's also because the superintendent is the cheerleader for the district. So it's getting out there and letting people know all the great opportunities that Farmington has, and also being approachable. When somebody needs to get a hold of the superintendent, they need to get a hold of the superintendent. I return phone calls, I pick them up, I talk to people and make a point of outreach. They're not always pleasant conversations, but they know that they can contact me and we'll sit down and work things out as best as possible. So it's about all of those things, just constantly celebrating what is happening. It builds a synergy that people want to be a part of.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Bigelow.
Hi there.
Could you please discuss how you manage your relationships with individual board members and the board as a whole? What is the optimal board superintendent relationship?
Be more than happy to. I have a very good relationship with my board, and I did with my prior board as well, but that doesn't mean we always agree, and that's okay. In fact, my personal opinion is it's important that people are comfortable to let me know their feelings and to tell me they think I'm wrong, because we all want to be rowing in the right direction together, and if we're rowing together but in the wrong direction, we're going to end up in a bad spot. So it's okay to have dissent. That's not a bad thing. It is incredibly important, actually. The way I actually communicate with my board, on the official aspect, whenever one board member asks me a question that has anything to do with the functioning of the school that all the other board members need to know about, I respond to the entire board at once, and I make that well known. And we actually work that out through board training, some of the ground rules. So that's been huge in the process. So there's no secrets with everybody. It's open and honest. I'm also very available. Email, telephone call. I get back with people right away. What I do is I actually schedule breakfast or lunch, individual appointments with board members on a regular basis. Not so much this year during COVID, but in the past that was certainly a part. And we have a lot of regular meetings within small groups. We work through committee work as well. So it's certainly a very open relationship, even when we're in disagreement. Nothing is personal. And like I said, that disagreement is important.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, Dr. Bigelow.
Hi there.
What do you believe is your strongest or your greatest strength as a leader? What is a growth opportunity for you? Let me read it one more time. What do you believe is your greatest strength as a leader? What is a growth opportunity for you?
My greatest strength is perseverance with projects, even when they're difficult, and an ability to connect with people, listen to people, not become offended. I've developed a very thick skin over the years, which is incredibly important as superintendent, especially during the COVID era. But I mean, that certainly is a great skill and an ability. My biggest part, I've had a lot of success, but I almost don't want to say this because it sounds like I'm, but it's not me that I'm having the success. I'm able to surround myself with really good people and make those connections with people around me so that we do incredible things. So all this work is not Steve Bigelow doing the work. It's really good teams that I've been fortunate to be around and develop. So I have a good eye for working with groups of people to get things done and knowing who to work with and how to get it done. As far as an area of growth, I'm constantly growing. It's not in one area. I need to grow collectively because there's always something to improve with. And a big part of that is not becoming complacent with things that work, but searching for new ideas, especially, if you think about the educational landscape right now, the traditional brick and mortar system that we have from the 1800s still, with the bells ringing and the structured classes, moving class to class, whether we like it or not, those days are changing. And so we need to be open to looking at new modes of education as we move forward. Certainly with one-to-one computers coming in through COVID, the idea that maybe you don't all have to be together in one room to take a class. Maybe there can be flexibility in scheduling. So I'm always open to learning more and finding ways to do it.
Good evening, Dr. Bigelow. Changes in our demographics and diversity in our community have resulted in demand for equity and inclusion.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, just to interrupt, I'm sorry, could you maybe speak into the mic? I can hear you well now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna start over, Dr. Bigelow. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Changes in demographics and the diversity in our community have resulted in demands for equity and inclusion from historically underrepresented groups. What can you bring to the table to help grow the cultural competency of our district, and where would you look to make changes, and who would you involve?
The most important piece of that is that change has to happen. We cannot continue doing things the same old way. The first part that I would do, and it's through a 100-day plan, but really take a look at what curriculum is in Farmington right now and what is being taught in the textbooks. I have a pretty good idea, and I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen right there from within classroom and classroom instruction. That needs to be a community effort, and involves bringing in teachers and parents within the schools to go through and actually do an entire audit of the curriculum as it is and where we need to go as a community. You know, the way we've been doing it for a long time, it's not getting the job done, and it's much of the history is not correct either as it's taught in those textbooks. So that's crucial. But I'd actually have to sit down, and we would have to do a study together to take a look and see where those changes need to come. And it's all about having a discussion with the community as well. That's the easy part as far as going through from the curriculum standpoint. The tough part is about addressing stereotypes and how we do that. That is a huge community discussion, which we have to continually educate people on, bring community members in to have those uncomfortable conversations and keep pushing it. But it needs to be a whole district effort. There's no one person that can be focusing. It needs to become the focus of everything that Farmington is doing.
Dr. Bigelow, in your most recent position, please tell us about some of the lessons that you have learned. In retrospect, name one thing that you wish you would have done differently.
The biggest lesson that I have learned, and I guess it wasn't learning it, but sometimes, you know, I guess taking things for granted. So the hybrid high school that I opened up, while I'm incredibly proud of it and they're doing remarkable things, my vision for the hybrid high school and where it's going are in two different directions right now. I had the idea of a hybrid high school that would both help students who were not successful in the traditional classroom, and we had to find another way to educate them, but I also wanted it to be the school of choice where we had kids from traditional high schools all over knocking down the door to get in. Because not only is it a place where we're able to work with students who are overcoming challenges, but I wanted it to be a place where students who are maybe learning at a faster pace and accelerating are able to go as well so that we can meet those needs. That's happened a little bit, but for the most part, it really seems to be concentrated right now on what would be the old traditional alternative high school population. And I want it to be more of a global population with our community and involve everybody and not just focused on one group of students. So lots of work that has to be done there. And I thought we'd be a little further along in that process right now.
What do you know about student achievement in Farmington Public Schools? What do you celebrate? What do you wonder about? And are there concerns that you would address early?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on my school data, looking at the achievement scores. There was nothing surprising that I saw in there. Obviously, Farmington is historically a high-achieving district and has incredible teachers, great services, does a remarkable job. But the struggles that are all throughout Michigan are within Farmington as well. And the biggest thing, and again, it's not a shock, but it's certainly apparent with Farmington as within many other districts, is again, we see an inequity in achievement scores between disadvantaged students and those who are not traditionally disadvantaged, the haves and the have-nots. And the challenge to that is providing resources to the students who require the additional resources, while also being able to work with the students who are already doing very well, but being able to support them as well. And what's a challenge, I know Farmington is going through this, and this happens in other large districts as well, it's the idea of people are stuck on everything needs to be equal between schools. If we're offering this here, we need to offer it there. And that's the wrong conversation. It's about fairness. And what's fair is providing more resources to the students in the buildings that need those additional resources to achieve. And that's the balancing part that has to happen in Farmington right now.
Dr. Bigelow, what kinds of supports or resources should be in place to ensure that programs are inclusive and meets the needs of all students? If you could specifically address how issues of equity and opportunity intersect.
Yeah, I have not looked at Farmington's MTSS program, but the multi-tiered systems of support. But I'm sure you've heard a lot about that, but that is crucial to providing services to the students who need it most, almost in a triage effect, so that learning loss is prevented and those students are able to be caught up. So that has to do with how instructional supplies and how resources are being funneled. That is enormous. But the other part is, and this is a much more difficult, bigger conversation, we have to get over some of the bias that many of us, all of us have bias, but the unconscious bias that is out there. And so there needs to be some training on staff too, that just because the student is in a Title I program doesn't mean that they're not able to achieve at the same level of everybody else. So there's certainly some education that has to repeatedly happen on that end as well. And that's very uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable for people to actually look at those biases that they have and may not even be aware that they're there. So again, that's part of that bigger community conversation as well. And we have to demand that students who are traditionally underrepresented are represented in programs, whether it's AP classes and some of these other things. There has to be an intentional push to include students where traditionally they were not. It has to be a conscious effort on behalf of the district, and it needs to be front and center of every decision that's made, certainly at the board level.
All right. Sorry about that. Can you give examples of how you have engaged with elevated student voice, and use that knowledge to improve the district?
Yeah, I actually meet with students, although, like I said, this year, it's been abnormal this year, admittedly, but I have met with some student groups over Zoom, just not the same. But our buildings have student leadership teams that I meet with, and we sit down and go over some of the problems that they're facing, or they just talk to me. I make myself very available, accessible. I attempt to attend as many events as I can at the schools, and obviously I can't be every place at one time, but I do get around so that the students actually know who I am and they're not shocked when they see me walk in. I mean, just having those relationships like that is incredibly important. Supporting them at athletic events and at theater productions and band concerts and those sorts of things. We actually have student representatives that are scheduled to attend all of our board meetings as well, and they become part of the board. This is at the secondary level, not elementary. But they start out by, we ask them some questions, they sit through the meeting, and they share with us our thoughts and ideas at the end of the meeting as well. So making them involved in that government aspect as well. The other thing that I do, I don't know if Farmington does this or not, but I've tried to move away from traditional surveys because I think we've all taken enough surveys, but we've gone to more of a crowd sourcing technique, and I use something where I put out one pertinent question for the group to answer, and they're able to respond on those answers, and it takes out the loudest voice in the room, and it makes sure that everybody has an equitable, equal voice, and students are then able to go in and rate the different comments so that those things that most people are thinking but maybe too scared to talk about rise to the top. So we use that for a lot of the conversations with students here as well.
Dr. Bigelow, how would you measure our effectiveness as a school district?
I've really changed my opinion on that over the years. The test scores are obviously important because that's what ends up being compared in the media. And there's some valuable information to be taken from that, certainly. But I'm more concerned about the yearly benchmark testing, the growth scores that students have. So, for example, NWEA testing, where you get a beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. To me, a successful school district and successful classrooms are those where the students, regardless of what level they started at or ended at, the classes where they have shown the most growth. That is something to truly be accepted or to be honored and celebrated. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily what makes it in the media right now. But to me, that is my true definition of success.
Thank you.
Dr. Bigelow, please discuss your experience and general philosophy with respect to collective bargaining. How have you achieved settlements that were embraced by both sides of the table?
I actually, in my earlier years, worked on the other side of the table, so I have experience on both sides with that. My most recent experience, it varies based on the district, and a lot of it has to do with what's the philosophy of the group that you're bargaining with as well. So I'll tell you, in Bay City Public Schools, there are 7 bargaining units that I work with. Most of them are affiliated with the MEA. It's about having a honest, open, good relationship with representatives from that group. But it's not a quick process. I mean, it is a long, slow dance. And at the end of the day, as a district, you have to know what that number is in mind that you're not willing to give up, and you have to hold tight on that for the betterment of the district. From there, it's about having conversations with the group to make sure that they are being honored and respected and certainly paid well, especially with where education is right now. We need to do everything we can to attract people into it. But we also have to be mindful of some of those legacy costs so that we're able to sustain the high quality services and the pay that's being provided as well. My preferable method for that is actually interest-based bargaining, where everybody is brought together and you share some of the common interests and work from there. That doesn't always work, though. It depends on what the environment is like during the time. I've been successful with negotiations. In the smaller district, I mean, I was able to just sit down at the table and get it done in a few days. In Bay City, it takes a long time. But like I said, my first year, we ratified a 3-year contract where people saw some sizable increases, which were fair and due.
Dr. Bigelow, how have you helped other leaders grow and develop with your own district?
We are constantly moving people who are interested in a leadership position or may not know, maybe they're not interested, but we know that they would make a good leader, constantly reaching out to potential candidates and having them, for example, take on some leadership roles in the district, often as a teacher leader or within a maintenance group or something out like that, but giving them some opportunities to lead, having discussions and an opportunity to experience the success that comes with that as well. There's an extensive professional development that happens with that as well to bring people along, but there's nothing better than actually having experience. And so you've got to give those potential candidates an opportunity to see what it's like. And some of them may decide that they want nothing to do with it. And that's actually a valuable lesson for them as well. So better to find out early than to end up in a career or profession that you're not happy with.
Can you describe your vision for a highly effective 21st century school district? What are some critical challenges on the horizon for the future of public education?
We have to break what is the traditional public education model, where that factory model where classes are moving after the bell rings, class to class to class. We need to challenge the notion that students are going to move forward in grades at a set pace and a set level, and everybody's moving through together. The idea that some of our students couldn't take some classes at night, replicating more of a college schedule, having some flexibility, those are all things that are absolutely on the horizon. Public schools are not going to survive unless we are more creative with how we do things and how we offer services to the public. It's incredibly difficult when you take into notions like transportation, how you feasibly do that. Sports and athletics has a huge hold on how schedules are dictated through the day. So there's some big hurdles there where we can certainly be creative and work through that, but it's coming and it may not be necessary. I am all in favor of face-to-face education. Absolutely. Nothing beats it. But that's not to say that there aren't times where a student may be better off taking a virtual class here or there. And so we need to provide those opportunities as well. But that's very different than, again, that traditional system that we operate under right now.
Thank you. That concludes our formal questions, but we do have time for any closing statements that you might have.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It really is a pleasure. Farmington's an impressive school district. Like I said, I've certainly been keeping up with all the issues going on there over the years, and it's remarkable. There's a lot of tension through any change, but you as a board have been dealing with a lot of change and tackling some tough issues. So that's admirable. And I just want to share, as board members, thank you for doing what you're doing as well, especially coming through this COVID year. I know it's trying on all of you, and you're doing miraculous work on behalf of the community and the people. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for doing everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you. And again, on behalf of the board, I'd like to express our deep appreciation for your interest in this position. As you likely already know, we expect to make a decision this week, tonight, about finalists that will move forward to next week, and plan to conduct our finalist interviews on May 11th, 12th, and 13th. You will hear from us on Friday about next steps.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right. I will ask Mrs. Buckley if our next candidate is on. If not, we will, pardon?
She is not.
Okay, then we will take an 8-minute recess. for me, please? Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. We are now ready to move on with our final interview for today. We have Dr. Krupi with us. Thank you for joining us. My name is Terry Weems. On behalf of the Farmington Public School Board, we say thank you and welcome. We're very grateful for your application to become the next superintendent of Farmington Public Schools. You have exceptional qualifications, and that's why you're here. Please accept our board's deep appreciation for your interest in our district. We are very proud of Farmington and Farmington Hills. Over the next hour, 45 minutes to an hour, you'll be asked 15 questions, which will be rotated among all board members. That's about 3 minutes per question in order to allow yourself some time to make some closing comments. I'm going to serve as chairperson and timekeeper. If you're ready, I will begin with the first question.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having me this evening. I'm honored.
Excellent. Dr. Krupi, we have all had an opportunity to carefully review your resume. However, our public has not. Please briefly introduce yourself and also highlight one or two of the most important highlights in your career or training that you believe uniquely qualify you for superintendent of the Farmington Public School System.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Amy Krupi. I am currently the superintendent of Hazel Park Schools. I've been here for 6 years. I'm a return back to Michigan woman. I spent many years in the state of Illinois, where I received my bachelor's of special education, a master's of ed leadership, a certificate of advanced study in ed leadership, where that is my superintendent's endorsement for the state of Illinois. You have to have a certificate to be a superintendent in Illinois, specific training. And then my doctorate in educational leadership with a focus on social justice. It was a brand new program specifically focused on social justice and equity in education. I have had roles. My first role while I was going through school was a paraprofessional. I've been an elementary special ed teacher, a middle school self-contained teacher. I've been a high school teacher, co-teacher, inclusion facilitator, department chair. I also had the opportunity to be a director of special ed and assistant superintendent in one of the largest school districts and successful school districts in the state of Illinois, which is one thing that really qualifies me and helped me understand how to run a very large school system. That opportunity in the state of Illinois in the Naperville Public Schools was one of the best opportunities because it not only helped me understand the ins and outs of special education, but it also gave me the opportunity and the bandwidth to really understand how to create curriculum and how to merge the importance of special education, general education, as well as finance together. An organization of over 30 schools working together in a large central office, as well as with all of the principals, assistant principals, curriculum office, banding and working together, doing the Baldrige Foundation Awards. That was just the foundation of what made me a very successful, I believe, superintendent. After I left the Naperville schools, I became much like an ISD superintendent overseeing special ed for 14 school districts. And then, as my father always said, I came to the dark side and went to general education. What helps me also look at the Farmington schools is my coming to Hazel Park schools, and where for the first time in my career, I worked with a very diverse school district. While Illinois school district in Niles was 42 different languages, that didn't have nearly the amount of learning and growth that I had in diversity, equity, inclusion as Hazel Park did. as I'm sure you're aware, that we have pretty much a 50-50 split of white and black students in Hazel Park. And so the growth and learning that I've done along the way by walking in shoes together with my staff and with the students there, and my learning that we've done along the way has really helped me grow as an administrator and as a leader and as a person in the Hazel Park schools. And so I think that will help me facilitate in Farmington some of the challenges that you are facing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I hope to share that, I hope, through some of the questions you'll ask me along the way.
Farmington, like other school districts, has experienced significant turmoil related to such issues as COVID, downsizing, and equity demands from a changing community with diverse needs and interests. What qualities, specific skills, and experiences can you point to that demonstrate your ability to bring together disparate groups and perspectives?
Well, I believe the last two school districts that I was in, as it related to downsizing and concerns, we're walking through financial challenges. In the last school district that I was in Illinois, they were at a $2 million fund balance. They work a little different than Michigan. And they were in a position where they would not be able to go out for, they don't go out for bonds. They were not able to go out and be able to loan money in order to do future projects. Thank goodness for the CARES Act dollars coming in, because that puts them in a really good spot right now to do some additions they'd like to. And so when I left after 8 years, they were at a $9 million fund balance. And so working together with the community and the board with zero-based budgeting, really looking at what your wants are, that's nice, but what do we need to do to move education forward to get to that goal of where you need to do. Same thing with Hazel Park, as I'm sure, again, you're aware, it's a $15 million deficit. They thought when we came, and really we ended up now for the first time, it was $11 million deficit for 15 years. It's the first time ever this year we are out of deficit and moving with a positive fund balance, potentially being at an $8 million 8% fund balance this year. So working together with the staff, the union, parents, the board was really central to really talk about what are the wants and needs and desires that we need to put in place to move forward, and also to continually move forward and get positive things happening in the classroom, restoring salaries, and also working with the Treasury and the ups and downs over the last 6 years about how we can put things in place. At the same time, trying to talk about the professional development that needed to lie in place as well. And so you have to sit down. One of the things that we have is we have district leadership teams, building leadership teams. We've had, so we meet every Tuesday morning, except this year every other Tuesday, to talk about what kind of things need to be happening at the district level. They take it back to their building leadership teams when they consist of a team of teachers, and talk about the things we talked at the building level or at the district level down to the building level. And then the building brings those informations back up to the district level. Additionally, as we worked through COVID, we had a weekly COVID team called the Moving Forward Committee that had both board members, community members, teachers, parents on that talked about how we wanted to open schools, close schools, what were those plans, what were those structures about how we moved forward. We still have been meeting up until just recently with that team as well to think about what does school look like and what should it look like next year. What kind of summer school programs do we want to put in place for parents? We did a survey and move those forward. When you are in difficult times, you need to be able to open up and listen to those individuals, send out surveys, and have everybody take a look. Everybody might not be on the same page with all of that information, but at least you're listening to those voices.
Good evening. Discuss, if you would, please, an effective process that you have used for developing a district budget, particularly when there are a variety of needs, staff wages, student support, potential loss of revenue from declining enrollment. Who needs to be informed? Who needs to be engaged? And what was the outcome?
Great, thank you. Well, we had have a long-range plan in order to move Hazel Park out. And so I believe, again, in zero-based budgeting. And especially with the large school districts such as Farmington, we would need to sit down with the business office and look at what's currently in place, what debts you have in place, your currently bond that you have in place. And what we are currently doing now, which is what I would ask if we have any of this, is let's look at our long-term technology needs. We just finally have developed, now that we're out of debt, 3 to 5 year technology plan with what are those technology needs that we have that not only includes our computers, but also any networking that needs to take place, any devices inside the classroom, outside of the classroom. And then the same thing with the buildings and grounds. What are the 3 to 5 year projections that we need with our buildings and grounds as well? Then our sinking fund plan. We're also working this with our curriculum as well. What are those long-term needs, 3 to 5 years, that we need with our curriculum as well? And then our finance committee has kind of reached out to the buildings and said, what are some of those wants and needs and desires you have? Same thing with HR. What are the staffing needs that we have? And then we also have to think about, such as with our moving forward and with our administrators, what are our projected needs of our students to build up and make it equitable to our students that we have. Let's look at our test scores and let's look at the items that we've been doing to assess our students and what kind of supports do we need to put in place to make sure that we're moving our students forward and that we're catching up to where we need to be. And then we develop a plan 3 to 5 years ahead, and we would bring that forward to our finance committee of our board after we've had conversations. So who would need to be involved in that? Every department of the entire district. We need to be talking with our union leadership. I have regular meetings with my union president of my teachers on a weekly basis. The other people that would need to be involved in that, of course, is the board committees, the building and grounds committee. If you have a curriculum committee, ultimately at the end, the finance committee, and bring all of those smaller pieces up for approval. That helps then develop your budget for the following year. Your cabinet level are the individuals that bring all of that to you. And then ultimately that's on display for the public. I would hope that our public would have had some input into that along the way based upon what are the hopes and dreams of the community as well.
Good evening. The Farmington Public Schools is in a competitive educational marketplace. Parents have options. What would be a plan to market the district and to communicate why parents should invest in the Farmington Public Schools?
Well, you have amazing programs. I just was able to delight myself over the last couple of days on your beautiful IB program and the beautiful art projects that were placed out there online because you couldn't go in person. So first of all, your communications team has to be key. I believe that a successful, outstanding communications department is important. And it doesn't have to be to send market things home or to do other things like that, but it is to capture the amazing things that our students are doing, that our teachers are helping our students to create. Because first and foremost, without our amazing teachers and staff, right, the students wouldn't be doing those. But our students are what sells your program, the amazing things that they do, where they go, who they become, and what they're doing. And so if I really enjoyed some of the items that I saw out there. So it's nice we have those things on our computers to see, but where are those art shows going? Can we get them up on billboards that are around us? Can we get them on TV? I don't know where all they went, but I can tell you they were beautiful. And so I think that's some of it, really getting those things out there. The other things are the scores. How do we shine our scores out there? I was able to go back and look over the last several years. Of course, we can't count the scores this year, right? And saying, where are we on our scores? We're in the middle of the pack in Oakland County, and so you've got to shine yourself up to the top of the pack. And so how do we do that? We need to go back and work with our teachers and put those shine those scores up to the very top of Oakland County. And so work with our teachers, the ones that are in the classroom, and say, what is it that you need? What are the materials? What are the practices? What are the additional supports that we need? What are the changes perhaps in the curriculum that we need? What are the innovative programs that we need to make that happen? And then maybe we need to listen to the students and the parents to say, what are some of the other programs and services that we have that maybe we might not want to do? And what are the other things that we need to bring in to be different and to shine? What is it that would make you want to come here? I think it was about 500 students maybe that aren't coming here. Why aren't they, staying in Farmington? So look down there on the students that are leaving and find out why. There are so many shining items that are here already in Farmington, and let's make sure that we get a lot of information out to the community to show them that.
Thank you.
Good evening. Could you please discuss how you manage your relationship with individual board members and the board as a whole? What is the optimal board superintendent relationship?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think building relationships with your board is depending on what board you have and what that board would prefer. Every time you have a new Board of Education, I think it's really important that the board sits down and has a conversation with their superintendent about how that board specifically would like to function. And I think it's really important that we sit down, we go over our norms, and we talk about our guiding principles, and we make a determination about how that specific board wants to function. And I think the superintendent needs to be flexible and change based upon that. So if the board would prefer always to have large board conversations and not for the superintendent to have individual board conversations, then that's what we need to honor. If the board is comfortable with the superintendent having a one-day open door where you always have conversations with those board members on an individual basis, then that's how you should function. If the board is comfortable with you having individual conversations with board members every quarter or every month or every week, then that's how you function. I've functioned in many different ways as a long-term superintendent and know which way is right. I think it's a matter of how you as a board work together more cohesively and feel comfortable. I think the most important thing is that what you say and what you do, everybody is informed, that there are no things that you tell one more than the other. So if one person asks for something, everybody gets it. That if one person asks a question, that everybody's informed of that question because somebody else might have that question too. So I think open, honest relationships, making sure that everybody has information that another one's shared for, and that we really follow and reflect policies. I also believe it's important that you follow the policies that are in your policy manual, and that I like to kind of say this, it's the policy, and if you don't like it, you as the board are the ones that get to change it. So this is the procedure in the policy, so let's go back to the policy committee if we are uncomfortable with something that's in there, and let's change it so everybody feels comfortable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe is your strongest strength as a leader? What is growth opportunity for you?
I believe my strongest strength is that I've been a superintendent for a very long time, and I've been a superintendent in and I want to say an assistant superintendent in a very large school district with 30,000 students. And so having that opportunity at a very young age laid the foundation of how to move in a very large organization. I've been a superintendent where I was not only the business manager, but the curriculum director as well. So that and the HR person. So I did all of that in one school district. And so the wealth of knowledge that you get from, understanding all the ins and outs of being a business manager, how to do a levy, how to pay people, how to hire people, how to do all the paperwork for that, how to write curriculum is really important. How to negotiate contracts, being the front person on line of negotiating is really important. Knowing all the ins and outs of all those processes are really important. And so when you are in a larger district again, and you have people that are underneath you, you can one, step in when someone leaves until you hire someone. But number two, you also have an understanding about what the parameters are for hiring someone, but also working and facilitating and coaching with them, and also developing organizational charts and working together. So I think the strength is that the many years of experience that I have that would help to run a successful organization such as Farmington, and also feel comfortable to oversee and allow those individuals to lead those areas, and also spend my time working with the community, out working with the principals, and then working with the Board of Education as well to help grow Farmington Hills. The other piece of place to grow is everywhere. I think we're always growing. I think that over the last 6 years, I've continued to grow, even though I'm into my 30th year of education. And so I think the most important thing I need to do is not get so involved in all those areas as well. I love education. I love the students. And so sometimes I have to not get so involved in all those little areas as well. I want to get involved in the HR area when something's happening, not get so involved in the business office when something's happening. And so I work really, really hard to sometimes turn off my microphone when we're in a meeting so that I'm not getting involved in it. When we're in negotiations, to turn off mute my microphone so that I'm not the one speaking, because sometimes being involved in that for so long, I feel like I have something to say, and sometimes I need to mute it and not do that as well. So my strength is also my weakness.
Good evening, Dr. Krupi. Changes in demographics and diversity in our community have resulted in demands for equity and inclusion from historically underrepresented groups. What can you bring to the table to help grow the cultural competency of our district, and where would you look to make changes, and who would you involve?
Thank you, Angie. I've been thinking a lot about this for Farmington as I've watched from afar, and being in Oakland County. I know Farmington is part of the Midwest Equity group, as we are. Hazel Park has been working for 6 years, and first we worked with J Marks our very first year, and then decided to step away and start with poverty instead. And so we did some how to work with poverty inside the district with Harriet and Pudge, and did a lot of book reads, and Hazel Park is whole staff book reads. And then we worked with Jay at our junior high and high school, and did trauma informed in the elementary. And then we started working with the Midwest Equity group as well. And we were with them yesterday. My team, I have a district leadership team, and I have one specific partner who's amazing, who meets with the equity group once a month. And as she and I were talking yesterday, and I really thought about this, guessing you might have a question about this for me, because I know it's a high level of concern. My answer would be this: I know you have an amazing diversity and equity individual on your team, and I won't name her by name, but I've enjoyed interfacing with her, and we were in the same trainings at the Midwest Equity Center. And I know that the Midwest Equity Center is adding another year, and so we are about to endure upon an equity audit. And my suggestion would be for Farmington is to add a 6th year with the Equity Center and to do the same. But it's not a normal equity audit. It has a heavy lift for the district that's doing it, because you have to be involved. And so my suggestion would be to do what we are doing and thinking about, and that is to lift up having the Equity Center come in and look at the different areas and assess that. That doesn't mean stop any work that you're doing with your strategic plan, but really look through the eyes and say, what are those areas that individuals are not receiving the same services that others are getting? What are those areas that we need to lift up in our curriculum that we might say that we're not seeing it through the eyes of others, and that people might be marginalized in? When I look at some of your data, your educational data, I see inequities among the scoring of students. And is that because of the tests, or is that because there's some classroom inequities about how we're servicing students, and there might need to be some other supports put in place. So my suggestion would be that we first identify indicators of inequities and have some questions around it. Is it instruction? Is it supports? Is it some more professional development for teachers? Is it changes in curriculum? And then we think about, is there some institutional racism that we need to talk about and look at and think through and have some professional development about? And then we need to really look at and write down and think about those strategies and take some action for them collaboratively together and have everybody's voices heard in that process. And this is quickly a conversation. This has to be much more long and drawn out and thought about it. And it's not okay, we do it and it's fixed. This is long conversations that we're thinking about. And then we have to monitor these and look for the impact that it happens inside the system. You know, this is not, inequities and steps to become an anti-racist doesn't happen overnight. It happens. And I can tell you this, in my 6 years of work, being able to use the word that I'm trying to become an anti-racist didn't happen this year, and it didn't happen last year. This is something that I'm coming to. And every time I read a book or walk through or listen to some of my administrators and listen to the things that they're going through and then look through that in the lens of what's happening inside the classrooms to our children, or I listen to a parent or I listen to a student, I learn something else of something that I should be doing in the classroom as a superintendent. And so I really believe that this audit that we talked about to the Midwest Equity Center is it the way to go for a school district. I hope that helps.
Thank you. In your most recent position, tell us about some of the lessons that you've learned. In retrospect, name one thing that you wish you had done differently.
Well, there's more than one thing. I think that's one of them there that I just talked about. And I need more than 3 minutes to talk about the things I would have done differently. I think when I came in and the state was about to potentially take over and the board had made large decisions about making cuts, and they did. The board was very bold in the things that they did. I wish that I would have done what we're just doing now, which is develop those 3 to 5 year plans at the very beginning. It might have pushed us another year before we came out of deficit, but I think it would have given us and the staff better input about what direction we were going. Instead, the staff had developed and had suffered, I do want to say that, had suffered cuts. And they didn't have a chance to really get to know me in the first year the way that I would have liked them to get to know me. All they did is they met this Amy Krupi person. She came in, she was making all these changes. We wrote all this curriculum in Understanding by Design format, and we were putting these processes in place. And yes, well, the district is so much different than it was before. Plans were developed without all of their input. Then 2 years down the line, their input started becoming very strong. And if you ask them today, I think they would say that their input is heard and very much a part of that. Had I had a chance to do it again, I would have slowed down that first and second year and not been so worried and in crisis about trying to get things in place to save and move them forward. I think that's probably my biggest piece, because people didn't get to know me my first and second year as they know me now. And I think that would have made a big difference.
What do you know about student achievement in the Farmington Public Schools? What do you celebrate? What do you wonder about? And are there concerns that you would address early?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think none of us know anything about student achievement right now. And I think that's the hard part in the midst of COVID. That it is unfortunate. And I don't think anybody here today should be testing anyone. I think I'm a big believer of that we know nothing right now. However, I have taken the time, as I think I mentioned earlier, to look at your scores and look at where you were in the past. And it seems that some of your scores were given and taking a little bit in the area of the M-STEP. You were from 2015 to 2018, those scores were moving back and forth in different grades. And in the middle school, in the 6th and 7th grade, your scores were dropping a little bit. In the area of ELA, your math was struggling a little bit. And again, as I said, you were looking like you were in the middle of the pack when you related to the 28 school districts. And so my wondering is why, when I look at your white students as opposed to your students of color, and I need to clarify that your African-American students are very discrepant to your white and your Asian American students. And so when I looked at the differentiation of that, I have to wonder why. I can't answer that. What I do need to do is I need to get in the classrooms. I need to look at what their access is, what the support is. Are they having equitable resources? Are they being taught the same? Do we need to give some interventions? Why is that? And what do we need to do service-wise? So I think the first thing I would do is talk to the principal and the teachers. I think the very first thing you need to do with data before you make assumptions is talk to the teachers. And see what's happening inside the classrooms. Do we have what we need to do? Do we need to have books in the classroom for the students that demonstrate what they look like? Do we have appropriate literature for them that motivates them to want to read inside the classrooms? So I think the first thing I would do is look, what do we have? What are we using? Talk to my central office administrators, what work has already been done, and bring that kind of report back before I make any assumptions about the data. It's too high level. I didn't have a place to see NWA data, or if you're using iReady, I didn't see any of that on the website. So what does that deeper down data tell me? And what local data do you have that we can look and talk about?
What kinds of supports and resources should be in place to ensure that programs are inclusive and meet the needs of all students? Specifically address, please, how issues of equity and opportunity intersect.
Could you say that again, please?
Sure. If you could, I'm asking the question of what kinds of supports and resources should be put in place to ensure that programs are inclusive and meet the needs of all students. If you could specifically address how issues of equity and opportunity intersect.
Mm-hmm. Well, currently, we're looking at several documents as we're relating to service resources and services to kids, as we're looking at curriculum that provide a look through to make sure that the resources that we're giving are done with equity. And I would say that that's one of the first things that we should do as well, is when we look at curriculum, there's a document that gives it through the lens of equity and inclusion to make sure that any resources and curriculum that we're doing do it through the eyes of equity and inclusion. So I think that's one of the first things that I would do is ask that, of course, I have to step back. The board has to be willing to do that first, because if you as a Board of Education aren't willing to do everything through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not going to work. So first you would have to bless it, be a part of it, and feel comfortable with that. And then, of course, my cabinet has to be on board with doing that as well, because it has to flow down. And then if everybody's supportive of that, then let's look at this document. We are, and so we've placed it into our curriculum review cycle. And so this will, one, help as we're looking and reviewing curriculum if it does that. I think the next piece is as you look at the data of what you're teaching, and as you look at the students that are involved in that, we have to assess and say, what kind of resources do we need to do to lift our students, to make it equitable? Is it that we need a paraprofessional, so a student with a disability can participate in an athletic event? Is it that we need to help facilitate and pay for something so someone of poverty can make sure that they're accessing the AP tests? And so when we look at our title grants, that we add money into our title grants so that all students that don't have the money can take the AP tests. That could be a resource that we're looking in place. It could be that we look at the social emotional pieces for other ones, that we make sure that we have social workers in all the buildings so that parents know how to access transportation to get their children someplace, or that they know how to get social emotional support for their students that might not have the emotional needs. So I would probably look across the buildings as well to see what kind of social emotional needs that we're addressing the whole child. Is it food that they need? So I would ask all of my principals, how are we addressing that whole child piece for all of our students? So I would ask them to look at the whole child pieces, see where we are with that, and then make sure that that's equitable for everyone. We need to remember that equitable is not equal. And so how do you balance that within your school? And then I might also ask my administrators and challenge them to say, what other tools are out there that we can assess and look at different scales to make sure that what we're doing and we're checking off is equitable for everybody.
Thank you.
I switched to my phone, so I don't know how this is going to work. So I had some challenges.
I can hear you. You sound great.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you. Can you give examples of how you have engaged with student, elevated student voice, and use that knowledge to improve the district?
Sure. You know, a couple years ago, we lost a principal at the high school level. Is she still? Claudia is still speaking. Am I frozen or is Claudia frozen?
No, I think Claudia may be,
Okay.
is frozen. So are you all set to answer the question, or would you like the question repeated?
Was it just how do I engage students to lift and change the district?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I've got it. Thank you. All right, I just wasn't sure if there was more. So a couple of years ago, our high school principal was recruited away closer to home in Kalamazoo. And when I took around the superintendent of that district, I listened to my students speak about how they felt marginalized because because they didn't the higher functioning students, the principal spent so much time with the students that were struggling. And so at that point in time, I decided to develop a superintendent advisory committee. And so for the last 2 years, I've had a superintendent advisory committee. And what I really wanted to have happen there was a safe place for the students to tell me whatever they wanted to tell me, and a place where they could use their voice, and that I would help facilitate them using their voice in an appropriate way that I hoped that when they went on to college in life, that they would remember and learn how to move through a system and eventually get to the Board of Education. And so that's exactly what they did. Last year, it was about cell phone and dress code. So we researched about cell phone and dress code. They brought those information back to me, and they eventually went to the Board of Education, and they changed the cell phone policy in the school district. They did not change the dress code policy, but they changed the cell phone policy. And so they presented it to the Board of Education. They didn't like what the board said the first time, so they came back a second time, and the board agreed, and they went back and worked with teachers and changed the cell phone policy. And what was really amazing is that they wanted teachers to be in control of the cell phone policy. They felt that we had minimalized the teachers' voices in the classroom, and they want the teachers to make decisions about when cell phones could be on or not. It was awesome. This year, they don't appreciate how they were given final exams and too much work when they were at home. They felt that it was too overwhelming. It's stressful to be at home, that teachers were just giving work to do work, and that final exams should have been projects. and that grading wasn't in on a timely manner, and that if they're expected to have their grades done, so should teachers. And so they went to the teachers first and had these conversations. And on Monday night, they'll be presenting it to the board. So this is my second year of doing this. They've also done other things such as, well, prom was a big piece. And so we will have a prom next Thursday night. And at first we said no dancing. But now that the guidelines have changed for dancing, they were very insistent that they get dancing. And so Dr. Krupi has now given in. And they will be dancing in squares with wristbands on, because that is in the guidance given out. And so they're a very bright group, cross-section group, well represented, and they talk and they convince in the right manner with the right research. That's just one way that students reach out to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's more fun for me than it is for them, I think. I feed them, they come, I have a great time.
Dr. Krupi, how would you measure our effectiveness as a school district?
Well, it wouldn't be, I'm going to say, sorry to say, it wouldn't be by your test scores. Because while the M-STEP is just a fantastic thing, and I am doing tooth and cheek, for you there. It really would be by other measures, and I think we as a group would do that together. I think we need to really think about, what do you want to measure as being a great school district? What does the community want to measure about being a great school district? What are those measures for you? I mean, you have a pretty great school district. You have sports teams. You have an IB school. You have wonderful options for children. You have sports opportunities. The question is that what is it that the community wants, who you serve, and I who serve you? What is it that you want? You have amazing teachers. You want to have a longevity for your teachers to stay. You want to have a safe, warm environment for kids, one that kids are healthy in, that kids graduate, that all kids graduate and that all kids are successful. Is it that you want this discrepancy between your students, your white and black students, to come together so that all students that live in your community stay? Are all your kids in your community here? I would measure it by the factors that we develop in our strategic plan together. I would develop, because DEI has been an issue for you for a while. How do we pull that together and find some peace there and move that forward? What are those indicators that you have there that you measure? I would say we develop a strategic plan. I know you're working on one, but those indicators that come together, we talk about it at every meeting. When I first came to Hazel Park, we started talking about my goals and the strategic plan every month. And then it wasn't really wanted to be done every month, but I think it's so important. In my previous district, we did. I think you have to talk about it every month, even if it's one area, to show that you stay laser focused on that area and that it's super important to you. If not, it becomes a strategic plan on the shelf. So I'm going to send that back to you to say, what do you want it to be? And then we develop it and measure it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Krupi, discuss your experience and general philosophy, respect to, I'm hearing a double sound. Are you guys echoing? Okay, I'll start over. Discuss your experience and general philosophy with respect to collective bargaining. How have you achieved settlements that were embraced by both sides of the table? I hear that.
Okay. Well, I've always been at the table for many years now. And you have to decide. Here in Michigan, it's a little strange because most school districts don't let their board members at the table. In Hazel Park, I brought our board members to the table. We have not been able to do interest-based bargaining at Hazel Park yet, but hopefully in the next couple of years, they'll be able to do so. So you have to decide first what kind of bargaining you want to do. And so I've done interest-based bargaining in Illinois. It's been very successful, and that's how there are no winners or losers. There's some great books to read about that, Getting to Yes. is a great book to read. It's an oldie but a goodie about bargaining. And so you just have to kind of make a decision about how you want to bargain and how you want to be about that. You know, it is a difficult time in education, and Michigan is which is why it came back, right? Michigan is at a time where teachers have been, well, the country, teachers have been disparaged for such a long time that when we sit and we look here and we talk about the things that we need to have, you have to do it in a way that says, if, you know, I would give them everything. I would give them the whole pot of money if I could, but you have to know that you have to be able to show what would happen if we gave this. And so you have to kind of lay it out and say, here's what we have, here's where we're going, I know where you want to get to, but here's what we have to do to kind of the things you do. And if you have those 3-year plans in place and you have a common understanding that everybody's been a part of about where you want to go, you can get to yes, because you've been very honest and open, and there's a vision for them to get where they need to go, and there's a vision for you to get where you need to go. So open, honest togetherness. And you just have to understand it's not personal. And if it gets a little personal, you walk away and you're still friends afterwards. I've not ever had anyone, I shouldn't say it, I've not had anyone ticket me yet. I've not gone to arbitration, but now I'm going to. So we've had pretty good bargaining.
Dr. Krupi, how have you helped other leaders grow and develop with your own district?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to include this year because unfortunately, the way we traditionally have worked on growing leaders has not been this year. So in the last when I came 6 years ago, remember, it was a whole brand new team. And so unfortunately, there weren't the individuals there. And so we were a blueprint district. And so the blueprint philosophy was, right, that you coach. And that's just a good philosophy anyway. And so I was able to coach a lot of the central office individuals at that time. I didn't have an HR person until last year. So I did all of that in Hazel Park up until last year. My curriculum individuals were new. And so I've coached them along the way. And in the buildings, all my building principals have been new except 2. And my director of special ed is new as well. So we spent time on a weekly basis in the buildings, and up until this year where I really didn't feel like it was right to be inside the buildings, breaking cohorts. So we would spend time coaching. And so the blueprint model that we utilized at that point was just coaching, go into the buildings, look at the data that we collect on the students, because we met on a monthly basis as a group looking at our building data, talking about absences, talking about teacher goals, talking about the data that they had when they walked through, how the students were achieving, how they were moving on that. Or if the building principal wanted to just talk about something that they were struggling with, that's what we could do too. I would say, what do you want to talk about today? What is it that you're working on? And so that's one way. The other way is I have an open phone that they can talk and call me at any point in time, and they know that. And so that's the other way to coach. We also allow our teachers to go to the leadership academies at Oakland schools. I think that's really important, and we've promoted that in Hazel Park, is to make sure that our teacher leaders are given the opportunity to go to leadership opportunities and grow to become administrators. So promote your own to the very best we can. And so we always have made sure that we do that as well. So you have to have an open door. Allow people to talk to you. I've had some of my teachers call me when they're taking classes and interview me and ask me for input. And I'm always there for anybody that wants to reach out and contact me at any point in time. Mm-hmm.
Describe your vision for a highly effective 21st century school district. What are some critical challenges on the horizon for the future of public education?
Mm-hmm. Well, for public education, obviously, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. Doing it the same way is just not going to go, especially after a year like this where so many of us lost students inside the classroom because now they've been online, and I think a lot of people are going to want to stay that way. And honestly, we don't know that to be true, and we don't know that not to be true yet, because we just don't know what the fall is going to bring to us. And we have to do things differently. I think some people have experienced that. I think the business world has experienced that. My son works for Intel, and I don't think he's going to have to go back to working in the lab. I think he's going to be able to stay at home. His wife's going to be able to stay at home. So the question there is that, what is that going to look like in the future for schools as well? I think we're going to have to start envisioning something different. We've been reading together as a group to say, what should it look like in our schools? And I think you are going to have to be a part of that as well as a school district, to say, what is the creative things that we can do to move ahead and be as a school district, because we're going to need to get our students out and about, envisioning different ways of learning, new creative workflows, and understanding at the high school level what we're doing. Are we teaching them to code in the elementary level? Are they taking the Amazon classes in the middle school level? Are they getting out into the work field at the high school level? Does everybody want to go to college? Is that the expectation really for everyone? Or are we looking at advanced manufacturing through Lyft downtown Detroit? Is that something Ferndale wants to do? I know that we have a lot of people going to the career centers at OCC, but is there something even bigger than that? And so I think in the future, we have to relook at the school day. We have to relook at more pushing towards some of them college classes, but I think we're going to have to really listen to our community and get our businesses involved as well. We're going to have to visit other school districts that are doing it differently, read some of these Transcend articles, and relook and revision our school district. Also, the teacher shortage is an incredible concern for all of us. We really have to think about how we can maintain our current teachers. They're so very, very important to us. And how are we going to create our own teachers out of who we have here? How are we going to encourage diversity into our teaching faculty? You have much better diversity than other school districts, if you can believe that in your heart. Your administrators look much more diverse than your teaching pool. However, we need to increase upon that inside your ranks here in Farmington as well. But how could you do that within the ranks of staff that you already have and grow your own? Maybe even grow your own teacher academy out of your students. So I think you have many challenges ahead of you that you can create by working with some universities. We're working with Oakland University on some of these teaching strategies ourselves, on trying how to grow some of our own educators, as well as the teacher pipeline into our schools. I think every school district is going to have to do that, or we're going to be in crisis for students or teachers.
Dr. Krupi, that actually concludes our formal questions for the evening. We now have time for any closing statements that you might have.
Sure. I turned the page. Well, first, I don't think we had an opportunity. I was very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of career opportunities in my life, and I was drawn to Illinois at a very young age, coming out of school for love, and when I had 24 good years in Illinois. When I was in Illinois, I had the opportunity to do the Illinois School for Advanced Leadership that was run by Cardinal Stritch University. I was in the first group there that was able to do that, and I was very lucky. It's much like the IASA programs that you have here for superintendents, and spent 24 good years of leadership in Illinois, and had very fortunate to not only have a tremendous amount of special education leadership there, but really good skills that I think can bring to Farmington, not only from the large size school districts, from the Naperville schools, where we utilized understanding by design, where they had a tremendous amount of diversity. They also had a tremendous amount of student growth high-performing students, very active parents with high expectations for their students, active arts, active athletics, and a very involved administration. We were very involved in the community. All administrators were expected to be involved in the community, on site all the time, which is where I think I have gotten a long time involvement in the community. And a very student-first belief as well. I was drawn back to Michigan for the same reason that I left Michigan, and that is for love. Every time I would come home and visit, my heart would just ease when I came back to Michigan. There's something about Michigan. But what I found when I came back to Michigan, right, is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done inside our schools. The same work that I didn't realize when I left that we were almost at the same spot academically as when I left. And so I have an incredible amount of passion and desire for the schools inside Michigan. Farmington, when I was in school, I went to Albion. My roommate was from the Farmington schools. And so it's very, very different than when she went to school. Farmington is an outstanding school district. You have amazing teachers. I've had the opportunity to meet some. You've even stolen a few from Hazel Park, by the way. It has outstanding community citizens. You have a wonderful structure. You have a wonderful administrative structure. And I know that I have wonderful opportunities that I can bring to you. Strength with curriculum, strength with diversity, equity, and inclusion, a strong belief and doctorate background in understanding what we need to be doing not only in the classroom, but what we need to be doing in the community and equity for all, whether that is race, whether that is gender, whether that is special education equity, based upon sexual orientation. I believe that we need to provide a safe and equitable environment for all students. I believe that we need to provide a safe, distraction-free environment for all students to be successful. And I believe Farmington needs to be one of the highest performing school districts in Oakland County and can rise up to be that. I am a person that will be actively involved in the Farmington community. I'm actively involved in not only the chamber in Hazel Park, but also I'm on the Promisome board. I am also in charge of the Hazel Park Coalition, and I would look forward to be involved in other items as well. I have a lot more to share with you about my experiences and hope I have that opportunity to do so again. I've watched your board meetings and I have enjoyed what I have seen over the last 6 months of your board meetings. I think you are a highly effective board on the way to do some more amazing things in Farmington, and I would be honored to have an opportunity to speak with you again about the things and the skills that I could bring to carry Farmington forward.
Thank you very much. This now concludes the interview, but again, on behalf of the board, I would like to express our deep appreciation for your interest in this position. As you likely already know, we expect to make a decision today regarding finalists and plan to conduct our finalist interviews on May 11th, 12th, and 13th. You will hear from us on Friday about next steps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This concludes our first round of interviews. The board will next move to public comment, and then we will take a recess to review feedback from our public, and then we will proceed to have a conversation about the interviews over the course of the past couple of days, and then proceed to vote. We will now move to public comment. Mrs. Buckley, do we have public comment?
Yes, someone did sign up on the form. However, I'm not seeing them in the meeting, so I'm going to check one more time. It's Danielle Ohm. Oh, there she is. Danielle, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckley. Hello, board members. Thank you for taking the time to hear me. I've been watching the candidate interviews over the last couple of days, and one of the things that I will politely say dismays me is the presence of Dr. Coffin in the interview process. I know from attending several of the community forums that one of the first things that we asked for of the superintendent search firm is that they not consider internal candidates. We felt strongly, members of the community that I speak to and that were in the meetings felt strongly that we needed a fresh start. So although Dr. Coffin is a very qualified individual, we would like to see a fresh face within Farmington Public Schools for our superintendent candidates. When we're looking over the fresh faces that we have available, I have enormous concerns about Mr. Bigelow and how he handled race-related issues in Bay City as it relates to the Confederate flag, which he labeled as African-American students were being harassed a free speech issue. And I feel that as a district with a history of race tensions and racial divide, that bringing in somebody that does not handle those situations well would be detrimental to our district. I will say that I have watched, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Dr. Amy Krupi, is that correct? This interview today, and I have looked at her scores and her statistics and her numbers in her current district. And out of all of the candidates that we have available, she is by leaps and bounds more qualified than any other interview that I have watched. We would be remiss to select another candidate out of all of the ones that I've watched you interview to select somebody over her. So in my opinion, after watching the interviews that I have seen and doing research into each of the candidates and who we have available, she would be my only choice of the slate that we have. And if you don't find that she is acceptable, I strongly encourage you to go back to the drawing board and select a new panel of candidates. And that is all I have to say today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll start with, let's see if we think we need 10 or 15 minutes.
We would need
Pardon?
to close public comment first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any more public comment? Thank you, Mr. Ridge.
We do not.
Okay. And so we will now close public comment. And now we will move into the board's review of the comments that we've received, the written comments that we've received. You have a link in your email. Just by a show of hands, the last time I looked, we had 32 comments. I'm sure we have more now, but I'm going to ask if our board members feel like they need about 15 minutes to review those comments. And then maybe we can, Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, can we have 20? I mean, I
Sure.
feel like this is an important decision.
Absolutely.
I had time today to review my notes from the candidates yesterday, and I want to be able to have an amount of time to look over the notes that I made today. And I haven't had a chance to look at the document with the ones that were submitted since early this afternoon, and I want to have enough time to do that too. So can I ask for at least 20 minutes, just because I don't want to feel I want to rush this process.
I don't disagree with you, Mrs. Heinrich. And if after 20 minutes, when we check in at 8:25, if we feel like we need some more time, then, the board will take it. So we will now recess for until 8:25 for 20 minutes. We'll come back in 20 minutes and we will discuss whether we still need more time to review the feedback. Thank you, board members. We'll see you at 8:25. Good evening and welcome back. I've received feedback from my colleagues that we need some additional time. So we're going to take 5 more minutes and regroup at 8:30. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. We are now back from our recess. We are moving into discussion related to the superintendent candidates, the 5 candidates that we interviewed over the past 2 days. I want to thank my board members for their time and for their questions. I'm going to ask each board member, if they so choose, to spend no more than a minute or 2 identifying some of the strengths and perspectives, the benefits of each of the candidates. In no particular order.
Hey, Terry,
Yes, ma'am.
do we have to speak on every?
No, you may not. No, you do. No, you do not. You can just speak
Okay.
freely about, what you observed and, as we move
Those that I
into.
just want to speak about.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So I'm happy to start. I thought that all of these candidates were well qualified, and having been in this space before, I feel like I feel like I'm in a much better position about this process than I have felt before. Notwithstanding anything from any previous candidates or previous searches, perhaps it's more just having been through the experience. I feel like we're in a good place. I thought Dr. Rudolph was a very qualified. I like that he was familiar with our district and our data. I like that he talked about how he likes to empower people to do their jobs. And I was really impressed by his measuring of effectiveness and his thoughts about that being a community effort. I like many of Dr. Delgado's answers. I like that he knew so much about our district. It was oddly weird, but at the same time, I felt like there was a strong desire to be here. And I really, really appreciated that and the fact that he was a part of our community already. And we've received a lot of good feedback from related to Dr. Delgado. I thought Dr. Coffin, we very much know her already as being very innovative. She talked about putting board priorities first and providing regular monthly reporting. She knows it's clear that communications are very important to this board. I thought Dr. Bigelow's views about the importance of test scores, at the same time, importance about growth was a very important distinguisher. I thought he was a strong candidate as well. And then I thought Dr. Krupi, I loved her examples around equity and opportunity. They were really great. It looked like she provided a really safe place for students to talk and have student voice. And I was also impressed by the fact that she sees beyond test scores being important. I love that she is interested in success beyond those scores, and I really appreciated her social justice background. Those were my thoughts. Mrs. Smith?
I was very impressed with a few of our candidates. Dr. Rudolph, his compassion for students, being involved with the community, wanting to be here long term, him wanting to engage with the board, and not coming in here turning things upside down. He wanted to listen first, and then after listening, then see what needed to be worked on and be changed. Dr. Delgado, and all of them, I love, they all have doctorates, so I was impressed with that. Dr. Delgado, community-based. He did his research. He also did his research on board members, you could tell. The communication that both him and Dr. Rudolph shared is a personal relationship with board members. I love the fact that both of them wanted to work with board members individually, even maybe doing a coffee or breakfast thing or lunch with the board member. Dr. Bigelow, what stood out with him, with me, was he doesn't mind to be challenged. He didn't mind being challenged by his board. You know, he has that ability to agree to disagree. And he, you know, his ability to work with and know the community and work with us all well. Dr. Krupi, her discussion on, I liked that she was transparent. She didn't hide that in her district, she made a mistake and she owned it, you know. And I love the fact that her and the candidates that I've named previously, they use the word we, not I. And that's important because it's not about just one individual, it's about all and the students. I loved her ideas on diversity and working with, going into a classroom, wondering what's going on. Why isn't African American students achieving? So those were the things that I liked about those candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I liked what Mr. Rudolph had to say about healing and building relationships. I think that is something very important for the time that we're coming out of right now. Dr. Delgado, I really loved the fact that he was a systems person, analytical, using that data and talking about that data in the manner that he did in order not only to set those benchmarks, but to achieve them and know how you need to operate based on that. And for Dr. Krupi as well, her brutal honesty about what she saw, the realities of the situation and how she would meet those realities head on. The fact that she put the onus back on this board to say that in order for any of this to work, we have to have your buy-in, and that buy-in has to work its way all the way down. I thought that was a very, very, I like Angie Smith's term, transparent. I really like that. I do like the fact that all of our candidates have some sort of experience with a district at least the size of ours, if not in some cases larger. So working with the systems of Farmington should not be a huge challenge for any of our candidates across the board. But that's what I'd like to share among a lot of other things, but for the time being, that's what I have.
I'm going to go to Mrs. Fox, only because she hasn't had an opportunity to speak. Mrs. Smith, is yours quick?
Yes, I forgot to mention Dr. Coffin. I'm sorry, I didn't mention Dr. Coffin. I love the fact that she was transparent about the Canvas, that they have made a mistake with Canvas. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fox and then Mrs. Heinrich.
Okay, thank you, guys. So with Dr. Delgado, my perception based on what I heard is that he's a strong leader. He's a systems and policy person. He's an analytical thinker. He uses data to inform instruction. He talks about the fact that it's time to begin to move into new models of schooling and learning. And I found him to be well-spoken and well-researched. The other person would be Dr. Krupi. I found her to be calm and controlled, and I like that calm and controlling. She and able to self-control, but I found her to be a strong voice for students, highly experienced with various stakeholders over many years. I too found her to be honest and transparent, and I like the fact that she put students first, and she really talked about Black students and how we can move those students forward in terms of trauma, in terms of social emotional, and in terms of achievement. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Heinrich.
Thank you. All of the candidates, I just want to express my appreciation and respect in just listening to every candidate. They're all highly qualified to be superintendents. And so the mind is to find the correct fit for our district. And I just took some notes and then went over and just like things that caught my attention. And some of them I like was repetitive, but I'll start with each candidate. Dr. Rudolph, he was just reflective and honest in his answers, and that was a consistent theme. He talked about his best strength is in building relationships and building trust, talking about collaboration, empowering people, very student-centered. His experience in working under an emergency manager, understanding financial challenges, I thought that was real important. I liked his vision statement, his high expectations, innovative culture and climate respective to all students. Future challenges of finding qualified teachers that need to think outside the box. Those were just things that stood out to me. Dr. Delgado, again, reflective, honest in his answers, transparency, honest communication with rationale behind decisions. I like that. He talked about the importance of relationships, building with the school board, staff, teachers, parents, community. His leadership style, I liked his cruise ship analogy that he said, how he learned to be more collaborative, investing in people and trusting people to do their jobs. That was important. His engagement with students and his student voice, importance of social justice groups. I liked what he said about measuring effectiveness as a school district, not just achievement, but looking at the experiences of children as they move through our schools. And his leadership, growth mindset, goal setting, communication, the fact he is a relentless change agent, uncomfortable with the status quo. Dr. Coffin, again, reflective, honest in her answers, listens first, seeks to understand, respect different perspectives. I like the fact that she said when Kelly, the quote, when Kelly is in the room, people are more collaborative. She shared that with us. And working with her in our district, I mean, we have an opportunity to observe her, and that is something that, you know, is out there. But no surprises, clear communication, the fact that she's fiscally responsible, that she had experience with negotiations during difficult fiscal times. She said not either or, but this, and I thought that was important. She's visionary, creative, innovative, believes in educating the whole child. That's something that I thought was important, creating opportunity for every child. Her leadership style, her ability to adapt, adjust, listen, means skills. I feel that she's courageous and sharing her difficulties that she had in her previous superintendent, and talked about the challenges and the lessons learned, and just finding the right fit for things. Things happen for a reason. Dr. Bigelow, again, reflective, honest in the answers, continuous improvement and growth, importance of being involved, visible, approachable, ability to listen and work with people. He talked about his success having good teams. I liked the fact 100-day plan. He talked about his biggest lesson was his hybrid school and how it was very successful, but not where he envisioned, and there's still work to do. The difficult balance between fair and equal, and the challenge to support struggling learners along with those doing well. And also the importance of student leadership teams, listening to student voice, visionary, talking about having to break the traditional model while recognizing challenges and barriers. Dr. Amy Krupi, reflective, honest, very experienced in her roles as superintendent, different size, different districts, financial challenges. I like that she shared that with us. I like she shared that everybody might not be on the same page, but they have to listen to their views. Her perspective in working with school boards, open, honest relationships, talking about norms and grounding principles, following policies, on the importance of strategic planning, community involvement, public education. Can't keep doing what we've been doing, but we have to grow teachers. We have to listen to the community, get business involved. This is longer than my minute, but I just really need to summarize these things and get these things out here because I think it's. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to share their thoughts or feedback? Ms. Dr. Blau.
Clearly, all of our candidates are highly credentialed. They have the background in the field of education that qualify them for the kind of work that superintendency requires. And we need to find the right fit for our community at this particular time. All of the candidates have tremendous strengths. Again, though, we have to choose who we feel will be the best fit for our community, given the challenges that face our community and the needs of our community at this time. When we began this selection process, we expressed an interest in finding somebody from outside of our current administrative network within our district. And I feel strongly that we ought to abide by that commitment that we expressed to the community. The two candidates that stand out to me as being the best fit for our community right now are Dr. Rudolph and Dr. Delgado. And as I read through the feedback that we've gotten from our community, it seems that that there's some shared thinking. Again, that's just the 50 or 60 comments that we've gotten so far. Dr. Rudolph, I love his "tell me what you need from me" approach, his commitment to shared decision making, the student advocacy committee, the welcoming and inviting in of student voices, and then the working together with students to address their issues and concerns. There's definitely a need for that here in our district. He was sincere, committed, approachable. Dr. Delgado has 10 years of experience in a district similar to ours. And he has been mentored during this time by a very well-regarded and highly skilled superintendent during that time. He's very articulate, approachable. He's done a tremendous amount of work in the area of DEIJ, inclusion, and equity. He's worked closely with Dr. J. Marks to bring additional DEIJ programs to Walled Lake schools, and he's aware that we need to both address inequity and diversity issues on our staff and for our students, as well as work to provide additional training opportunities for our teachers and staff and administrators to continue to do the hard work of the anti-racism work. He also clearly has spent a lot of time watching our board meetings, researching our schools that he knew, the Forest School song that he quoted Ms. Fox about the relentless change agent who is uncomfortable with the status quo. I loved his idea of leading with courage, and his willingness to admit that he's working on talking less and listening more. And I would like to have an opportunity to talk with both of these candidates further at a second interview, Dr. Rudolph and Dr. Delgado.
Thank you. You were muted, but I was picking up what you were putting down. So
Thank you.
I think when we look at this, at this point, we are not selecting a superintendent tonight. We're selecting 3 candidates who we are bringing back for another interview where we will be able to do a deeper dive into their answers, into their backgrounds, and get some of the questions that we and our community members have and have proposed both through the forum and through emails as well. I think overall we have some very good candidates that were presented to us by our search firm, and we have people who have done their research, who understand the district, and who have a good knowledge, at least, of the surrounding area in some way or another. I think that what we need is someone who is able to look both at our systems and see where we are succeeding and failing, but who is also able to get outside of that analytical role and also be that the district's greatest cheerleader, as we have heard now and again from both candidates, from ourselves when we're looking at the profile, as well as some of the candidates who have been interviewing. We need someone who we are able to work with as a board, who we think would work well with us as well. So we have some great choices to make. I'm looking forward to moving forward into the next phase.
Is there anyone else? Okay. So at this point, I would encourage board members to give some thought to our superintendent profile. Our superintendent profile was developed with our input and with input from our community. At this time, we need to identify, as Mr. Rich pointed out, the candidates that we feel are a good fit with our profile and with our board that we want to invite back to ask some additional questions if we have some additional clarifying questions. So at this time, I think we might be ready for a vote. I'm looking at my board to see if anyone has any questions or has any more thoughts that they'd like to share before we move into that phase. I would like to describe how we will vote. Board members will send their top 3 choices in no particular order to Kim via email for record purposes. And then we will, each of us state, and I'll ask Mr. Walker to ask each member, call each member out, who will state who they chose as their top 3, once again, in no particular order. Should a candidate ever appear 5 to 7 times, they will become a finalist. Should a candidate receive less than 3 votes, they will be removed from contention. Should less than 3 candidates become finalists, we will vote again. Ideally, we will arrive at a candidate during our first vote. If we do not, we will vote again, and we also have some contingency plans. I won't go into those because I don't anticipate that we'll be in that space. But if we are, I will communicate what our protocol or what our process is. Each one of us received this in an email, and hopefully you will have had an opportunity to read through what our process is and what our contingency plans are. Are there any questions on that? Dr. Blau?
So we must pick 3?
Yes. Yes. And we discussed that with our consultant, and there was some logic behind why we would pick 3 as opposed to 2.
Oh, right. I remember now.
Mm-hmm.
So who's doing the tally marks then?
I'm doing the tally marks along with Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker will call out by roll call.
Okay, and then, but we send 3 names to Kim Buckley by email.
For her records. Yep.
Okay.
And so I'll give you guys all some time, to think, reflect. You know, some of us may have, a top 1 or 2 and are struggling with 3. Some of us want 4 or 5 and have to whittle it down to 3. So I'll give you a few minutes to give that some thought and to send your email. And then I'll try to look to see if we've got folks who are ready.
Okay, I am in my Google email. Can someone give me the title for that Kim Buckley has sent? Is there a title?
There's no title. You'll just create an email.
Oh, I will create. Okay, yep. I'm sorry for not listening.
No problem. No problem.
All righty, I got you.
I'm sorry, Terry. Will you give me 1 minute? I need to
Sure.
step away for a second.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Mabel, just so you know, you are not muted right now.
But you can't hear anything, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's quiet
when
over
you're
here.
talking.
I'm not talking.
Oh, no, it's quiet. But I just wanted you to know that you're not muted.
Thank you.
I just closed out the background noise. Hopefully that will stay closed out.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, on the matter of superintendent candidates.
Gary, I
Yes.
didn't get an email from you.
I just sent you one. Says it. Whoop, who did I send it to?
I don't know.
I sent it to myself. I'm sorry. I will forward you what I sent to myself.
So you got a few flaws after all, President Queens.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel better about myself.
Okay. On the matter of, is everyone ready? Okay. On the matter of superintendent candidates that will move on to the final interviews next week, each one of us will vote for 3 in no particular order. I will ask Mr. Walker to do a roll call.
Dr. Blau,
Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Bigelow.
Ms. Heinrich,
Dr. Rudolph. Where did I put mine? Okay, Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Krupi.
Mr. Rich,
Dr. Krupi, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Bigelow.
Ms. Fox,
Are you on mute, Mrs. Fox?
I think you're unmuted now.
Y'all asking me to do too many things. Okay, let me start again. Dr. Delgado, Dr. Rupi, and Dr. Randolph.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, my earplug came out.
Dr. Delgado, Dr. Rupi, and Dr. Rudolph.
Okay. Just so I want to confirm, Ms. Fox, that was Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Krupi, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, doke. Ms. Smith,
You are on mute.
Okay. Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado. And this one was a hard one. I switched to Dr. Krupi.
I myself am Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Krupi. And Ms. Weems.
I am Dr. Delgado, Dr. Bigelow, and Dr. Krupi. And it appears we have 3. Mr. Walker, do you have the same?
Let's see. Minimum 5 to 7, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right? 5 1, 2, 4, 6, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 3. Would you like for me to read the 3 that I have off to you?
Yes, and then I will confirm that we have the same number.
Okay. My 3 are in no particular order: Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Krupi.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I have the same, and just for the record, I will read off the number of votes that each candidate received. Mr. Rudolph received 5 votes. Mr. Delgado received 7 votes. Mr. Bigelow received 3 votes. Mrs. Coffin received no votes, and Mrs. Krupi received 6 votes. So we have announced our 3 finalists who will be moving on to next week's interviews, and they are Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Delgado, and Dr. Krupi. I am really pleased with these choices. I do think that I would have been satisfied with a different way, because we had really good candidates. So thank you all for your work, and I'm glad that we were able to come to this consensus in our first go round. I will ask Mrs. Buckley if she can please inform all of the candidates of the next steps as we, Mr. Rich.
I've already got information from Kevin. He's letting the candidates know and is working on scheduling them. Okay,
perfect. So Kim, you do not have to do, Mrs. Buckley, you do not have to do that. But Mr. Rich, if you would make sure, Mr. Rich, if you would make sure that they do that tomorrow as we promised. We did tell each of the candidates that we would do that tomorrow.
I believe he's either doing that tonight since he's in Chicago and has an extra hour on us.
Oh, great.
Or is going to be doing that tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we've made our selection. If there are no further comments, I'm looking at my board members. Dr. Blau.
Between now and when we do this, the second round of interviews, do we have an opportunity to pursue other, additional information like contact references and those kinds of things?
That is a great question, Dr. Blau, and we'll be sending out instructions on that following this meeting. Yes, okay. We need to go through the process of checking references, and we also need to go through the process of identifying questions that we want to ask the candidates for next week. So our consultants advised us that it would be best practice to ask the same questions to each of the interviewees for the first round. For the second round, because we have an interest in going a bit deeper and really understanding the candidates a bit more, we have an opportunity to ask specific questions to each of the candidates. And so we need to develop those questions. We can ask our search firm to help us, but I really think that, each of us has some specific questions that we want to ask these candidates. I would suggest that you accumulate those and send them to both myself and to Zach, Mr. Rich. And what we'll do is we will take a look at those and we will combine questions that are similar. If there's a specific question that you want to ask all candidates, let us know that, or just a specific candidate based on their experience, let us know that. And again, we'll sort of combine them, and then we'll send them back out to you as a group and ask that you only respond back to Mr. Rich, who will, make tweaks. Mr. Rich?
And then just a reminder for board members as well as community members, the second round does consist of those questions, but it also involves a short presentation on an educational topic of the candidate's choice. So questions can be about that as well. Obviously, those might not be pre-planned questions as they will be about the presentation, but I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that that will be the next step. We can certainly ask about those topics ahead of time. However, I'm sure that they will be working on those up until they begin presenting.
And just another point, we have a whole schedule for the day outline, which I believe should have been emailed to you. If you need need that bumped up to the top of your inbox, let us know. We have a certain period of time where the candidates will be able to visit, the district and learn a bit more from our cabinet. There will be some interaction with board members, and then there will be the actual interview, which is inclusive of their presentation to us. So what we'll need to do is figure out how many questions we can fit into that interview time period. And so we'll come back and let you know that. But this is the only opportunity that we'll have as a group to have those conversations. So if anyone else has any questions about next week, Dr. Blau?
So in terms of contacting the references, how does that work? Do we each contact the references, or do we divide up the references?
So I would suggest that, similar to how we did it for our search firm, that we split them up. And so we'll give you some suggestions on who you should call. And then obviously you're free to, entertain additional, sources of information as well. Mr. Walker.
Just to confirm that during the candidates' second round of interviews, we have some focus groups selected that will also be able to interview the candidates and provide their feedback as well. And we will have access to that feedback prior to that interview of that particular candidate. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Walker. And I think it's going to work similar to how it worked today, where we will get it, shortly before we're required to vote. And it will be in the form of similar to how it was today. Please provide us with your thoughts. We won't unfortunately have an opportunity to interact sort of, in person or even virtually with the focus groups, but they'll be sharing their written feedback with us.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fox.
So is there a process by which we would be visiting the community of that particular candidate to get a feel on an in-person kind of way?
There is not, but I am hopeful that by contacting references, that will be the way that we can do that in this sort of, pandemic environment.
Okay.
Mr. Rich.
Thank you. One last thing. Currently, as part of the day at the district, each candidate has a tour in the morning. And so I know I've had one board member reach out on being one of the board representatives on Tuesday to go with on the tour. I know that other volunteers would be greatly appreciated. I know some can't during the day, and that's totally understandable. But please send me your availability for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the mornings for those tours, just so I am aware.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Mrs. Smith?
What time on Tuesday? I'm available all 3 days. So we're looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
Yes, Mrs. Smith.
Yes, I'm looking. I had it up. Okay, it would be starting at 8:30 and going until about probably 12:30 or 1.
Okay, you can put me down for all 3 days, but I would have to be done by 1 on Thursday.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great job, folks. We're on our way. Okay, if there are no further questions, pause. We are adjourned. Oh,
I have a question. What were the particulates that were in my last sip of coffee? There was something in there. I don't know what it was. But we can still adjourn.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.